And that's where you're going. So didn't they know this? So let me put it this way. For the past 20 years, we have been fed constantly by both parties with all kinds of numbers and analysis of energy economics and fuel dynamics, and all, which we don't care about. And at the end of the day, you see crass incompetence. Meanwhile, Samson, as this goes on, the people in charge, the ministers, the politicians, are making millions of dollars over this crisis. Felix just said something. He said, if ECG collected 100% of all revenue, it will still be insufficient to pay the energy debts.
The experts have said this.
Yes, I know that too. That is the definition of incompetence. It means there is no way of solving this problem, and that is not your fault or mine. It is not my mother's fault. They have to solve that problem. And for 20 years, look, before President Mahama's first term, we had been coming towards doomsday. And analysts like myself and many others said, we are going to hit a rock, we are going to hit a rock. They sat down, they made these arguments back and forth, and were incompetent, did not solve it. Around President Mahama's time, it hit us in the face. We went through years of doomsday. People died and suffered. I had to organize demonstrations before they set up. Then when they sort of fixed it, after signing all kinds of agreements which profited them corruptly, the new government comes in, NDC. And let me give President Mahama some credit for ESLA. ESLA made sense. ESLA had the potential to deal with it. Then you have the NPP come in. And my own dear friend, Ken, and the people who are running it, did the crazy thing of putting ESLA where it did not belong. I don't want to go into all this, but when they did the capping and other things, and then they collateralized ESLA and all those things. And remember, we criticized them. We were extremely critical of them. Then you have a situation where the problem compounds. Even though they kept the lights on, more or less, the debt they came to meet is the debt they leave. Okay? So you have a situation where our politicians who are paid, and these are the Article 71 people, they pay themselves world-class wages. They have to solve the problems. They don't solve the problems. Unfortunately for all of us, they rather profit from the chaos, and then when they finish, they tax us again. All right? So look, at the end of the day, you heard Prof. Bawku. Me and Prof. Bawku, we are nerds. We like data. We analyze those things. We can speak to them for the whole day. But I'm telling you, nobody remembers what he talked about. You had Felix spend 15 minutes explaining all these things. It's your job. Nobody cares about it. When you travel to places where leaders work, you don't know where they bought the gas from or whether they are using crude oil or nuclear energy. Your lights stay on. Please, sit up, do your work. Because consistently they come at us with this and that, and then when the problem comes, they come and explain all kinds of things that we don't care about. If you are competent, solve the problem. And look, it's a bipartisan problem.
But they are entitled to take you back to the history. And for example, and as I hear it's beginning to be mentioned, I think last week, the U.S. ambassador who is leaving now had an interview with my friend Bernard. And he spoke up about the MCC, the Millennium Challenge accounts. We were going to benefit in excess of, is it 316 million US dollars in it. Then we did the first tranche, the second tranche. The NPP came in, they botched it with the PDS, meaning the problem would have been improved, would have been better off. So they must tell these stories. That is what I'm saying. And tell you why they are making
I'm telling you that we have a bipartisan problem of ineptitude. This PDS problem, I was kicked off a committee. And this is in camera. The committee sits in camera. Because I started saying where you're going, it won't work. I ended up in court. And all kinds of things happened. My problem is, if we had competent managers, let me say this, Simpson, the problem in our energy sector will not be solved by taxes. The problem in our energy sector is a problem of incompetence and corruption. The people who run the energy sector, check, when they leave very rich.
Presently, it's a problem of money.
Presently, it is a problem of incompetence and corruption. Listen, let me make this clear. The tax looks like it is necessary because somebody has to pay that bill. I think if we had a competent government, they will structure, and we fought for deregulation, again, my own Imani. And when, people forget, but when we got deregulation in the first few months, fuel prices went down, okay? If they did their work well, and then they taxed us, we will pay on condition that these problems will not recur and the incompetence and corruption will not continue. Because after paying, after doing ESLA, after putting all kinds of levies back and forth, we still are left with the problem. So see, as far as I'm concerned, the NPP is entitled to play politics with it. Because the NDC did the same. But who suffers? We suffer. Let me make this clear. E-levy is not the same as the Dumsor levy. E-levy was far less than the Dumsor levy. But E-levy was
That's the point Dr. Bawumia makes.
Yes, but E-levy was more annoying and was more unjustified. All right, hear me. That's why I opposed it. I still think it was not necessary. This levy is far more than the E-levy. But it is not as annoying. It is not unjustified under the circumstance. But the circumstance is a circumstance that is caused by ineptitude and corruption.
You're not talking about what annoys us. We are talking about what burdens us.
Well, what burdens you is incompetence and corruption. And I'm telling you that. That's why, look, I pray that this tax will solve the problem. Mark it, I say here, it won't solve the problem. So let us find the actual solution to the problem. And I mentioned that ESLA had a ray of hope. Okay, why are we not re-looking at ESLA? All right, we need to find a way to solve it. I didn't hear Felix tell me that this will solve the problem. And I said that at the end of the day, he has said, even if ECG collects 100%, who sells fuel and makes a loss?
Kofi, are you thinking the way I'm thinking, that the lack of consultation, the ambush manner in which this was presented was intended to escape, you know, the opposition that consultations would have brought in and the pressure that would have said, hell no, we don't want it?
Yes. They, you know, brought this in the way they did because they wanted to avoid what I'm saying. Okay, an analysis of the thing and an exposure of the fact that first Dumsor happened under JM. Before then, we saw the problem coming. They didn't do anything. So they want to avoid that. They, you know, put it in.
But that is what you in CSOs have always said. That's bad governance.
It is bad. That is what I'm saying. We are suffering the effects of bad governance, and we are seeing it in our energy sector. Ordinary people suffer because of that. So what I'm simply saying is this, honestly. If this was going to solve the energy problem, I will support it. What I'm saying is, it is more than E-levy, so NPP have a right to go up against it. Okay, but it is less annoying, and under the circumstance, more justified than E-levy.
If they had opened it up,
the same incompetence persists. I don't see the changes we need to see to put the right people in the right places. Ask them who has been buying the fuel. Okay, you end up with politicians around. And they are dealing in fuel, etc. Look, there are really competent people and engineers in this country who can solve this problem. But there's so much money. There's tens and hundreds of millions of dollars sloshing around in that sector. Okay, people come into office and they think that they must corner that space. So in short, this I don't think will solve the problem.
Are you as concerned as those who say, because there's no sunset clause to this, it makes it even worse to speak about the fact that we are trying to take a benefit from a windfall from the CD's performance?
Exactly. In fact, in another place, what I said is they just impose this tax. In places where proper governance works, you subject the idea to scrutiny. In academia, they call it peer review. But in governance, you subject it to think tanks and other people. What is the energy problem? The amount of money we need? How much are we going to make from this? How do we connect the problem to the solution? How long is this going to take? Is it going to go on forever? Will another one come at another time? We have not had sufficient justification. They owe it to us to explain. So as we speak, we are just going to be paying these taxes. And yes, the fuel price has gone down. They are taking credit for it. They must take credit for it because they are in government. But the same way it went down, the same way it can go up. And if it goes up, what happens? Okay, so some of these things which affect people, we need more discussions, we need more credibility around it. Not the usual politics which leads one party to walk away you know, and then they just impose it because they are here and, you know, they are on a high, all right? And we are going to go through this for 4 years.